Matchmaker.fm connects podcasters and guests. Welcome to Matched, the show where we talk to some of the most incredible guests available for an interview right now. I'm your host, James Mulvany, founder of Matchmaker.fm, and this is Matched. So Godwin, tell us a little bit about what you do and your podcast.
Yeah, fantastic. So, like you said, I am a podcaster, and so I host the Digital Introverts podcast. It's a show where I interview a lot of entrepreneurially minded introverts on how they've been able to find success and fulfillment in their lives while staying true to their personality. And yeah, I've been having lots of great conversations with so many different introverts on how they've been able to overcome their self-limiting beliefs and a lot of great things like that. So that's only half of what I do, actually. And so so I do that in my quote-unquote spare time. And so the other half of what I do, I actually work in a pharmacy. And so I'm planning to apply to pharmacy schools this year. So I'm doing that. My future goal with that is to work in the innovation space within pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, that kind of thing. That's my actual educational background. That's what I did in school. And yeah, eventually my future goal is to build a biotech startup. I think that'll be super neat. So
that's really good. So combining the kind of the entrepreneurial side of things with, what you learn in school.
That's right, correct.
So if you were famous, what would you be famous for?
Okay. If I was famous, I think I would be famous. What would I be famous for, actually? Be famous. I started recently getting into playing chess again, so I think I want to be famous for chess streaming. I don't know. That was a weird answer, but that's.
I think that's a cool answer. Yeah. Like just being like famous for being insanely good at chess.
Yeah, it's good. I've recently got back into it. Right, I'm looking at people who are streaming on Twitch and that kind of thing. I think it's really cool and it's unique, right? So let's just put it that way.
Okay, cool. And next up, if you could be any animal in the world, what animal would you choose to be?
My spirit animal has always been a turtle, so
easy.
It's good for me. Like they are great. They live long. They seem very peaceful. So maybe not snapping turtles, but like in general, they seem at ease. Yeah.
What is it that appeals to you so much about starting your own company and entrepreneurship?
For me, really, it's being able to take an idea and, my own idea and see it through. That is really kind of exciting because if you have a personal interest or you're personally invested in the mission and vision of whatever it is that you're starting, like, for example, I'm very personally involved or personally interested, right, in the mission of digital introverts, for example, right, then you'll be able to have that intrinsic motivation to keep going when, for example, things get tough. So that is where my interest stems from. I've been doing this. I've been dabbling in a lot of different side projects ever since high school, actually. So this is kind of my thing. So in high school, I was building WordPress websites for fun. I'm that type of person. So
yeah. That's how I got started. In high school, I was designing those little animated banners that used to flash,
yes.
On the corner of screens. Yes. That's how I got started, and that was my first ever job. I didn't go and get a part-time job. I just started. I found people who wanted me to design banners and went and designed them. But that's just great. It's a good experience. It kind of opens you up to how to do a bit of business online, I think. So
yes. Online business is it's really here to stay for sure.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how did you? Obviously you consider yourself a bit of an introvert. I think a lot of people would maybe say that podcasts are more associated with extroverted people who want to kind of, spread their message to the world and they're kind of loud and in your face. So I'm curious to know, what is it about podcasting that appeals to you as a medium, and why did you actually start podcasting in the first place?
So great question. That's a two-part question, really. So so I'll dispel the myth that podcasting is only for extroverts, because I think it's a very great activity for introverts as well. Whether it's you're doing a solo show or whether you're doing a co-hosted one, or whether it's just with guests with interviews, like the majority of people on Matchmaker, right? The majority of hosts are there because they want to find guests, and so it appeals because first of all, it is audio, so there's no you don't have to show your face on camera if you don't want to. Although video podcasts have been getting really popular anyways, right? So that's one thing. But then the second is um, just being by yourself in a room, just recording, just that very activity, or even having one-on-one conversations like we're having right now. It's great. It helps introverts really gain energy, actually, right? It's very, I think, therapeutic in a way, especially if you're doing a solo show and you're just talking to yourself on the mic. You just let out your thoughts, and yeah, I know for myself, like it helps me to talk over things, right? To speak about problems or issues, or just having a great conversation with someone else. Yeah, it just helps us relax, and it's great. I think the audio is a really prime platform for that type of thing. I know I started my show because I didn't want to film YouTube videos.
Right.
That was my original reason, in the sense that I started interviewing, or I started having conversations with other people, about this issue about this notion of introversion, I guess, in the digital age, and that stemmed because I was doing some background research for the book I'm writing, actually. So it's so the podcast stemmed because I started writing this book. Originally, I wanted it to be a memoir, actually. It was just a way for me to explain how I overcame, shyness, social anxiety, low self-esteem, that kind of thing. And then having conversations with other introverts, I was like, okay, these conversations are very valuable, very impactful. I shouldn't be the only person who was listening to these. So that's how the podcast was born, actually. So, this is all late last year, and then earlier in 2020 was when I started recording and releasing episodes. And so, yeah.
So how's it been going this year?
Yeah, it started and it's going, right? Obviously, I've had released quite a few episodes, but it's fascinating because obviously, Matchmaker has helped with getting guests. Of course, that's the purpose of it, right? But I've had a lot of great guests from on there or from there. But to date, like right now as we're recording, I have over 180 recorded interviews, actually. So which means one of two things. One is that I am a little bit insane for doing that, but also second is that this topic really resonates with a lot of people, right? So the podcasting journey has been great. I've been able to network with a lot of other podcasters, people who work in the audio space as well in general. Just getting tips and tricks on how to it's a whole, for me, a podcast, but promoting a podcast is a whole exercise in digital marketing, actually. How do you get your word out there? How do you promote yourself without coming across as annoying? How do you grow your audience? All that type of thing. So it's been pretty fun.
I think actually, so here's a good question. So you touched on an interesting point there. How much time do you spend promoting your podcast versus actually recording episodes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it's still, for me right now, it's a bit skewed towards recording, right? And so promoting, I do promote. Like, a lot of people think that releasing episodes is promoting your podcast, but it's so much more than that, because I do a lot of networking online, just like through having one-on-one meetings, or just interacting with people on social media as well, right? Some of my favorite channels to use are LinkedIn. Obviously, that's how we first connected. Twitter, Instagram is really good for podcasters, and Facebook groups and things like that, right? That for me, having all these different interactions exposes kind of new people or new audiences to the show, and so they would get intrigued and like, oh, I heard that you have a podcast. Can you tell me more about it? And so that's how the, I guess, the organic marketing kind of grows from there. I know for a lot of people, like I get a lot of DMs, especially on LinkedIn, actually asking about the show, asking how you started, or if they want to be a guest, if they can be a guest on the show, things like that. So and what's funny or what's interesting is that for the entire duration of doing the podcast so far, it's always been a huge kind of imbalance in terms of I haven't necessarily had to ask a lot of people to be a guest. People have been reaching out to me and asking if they can be on the show, actually. So that's I think that's been pretty interesting dynamic.
Okay, cool. What was it that prompted you to sign up to Matchmaker in the first place? I know obviously you mentioned we got in touch via LinkedIn, but what was it about the platform that spoke to you, I guess?
For me at that time, actually, so at that time when you reached out, it was my primary methods of getting guests were actually, I had everyone who I interviewed for the book, right? I asked them, vast majority of them came back on to record a podcast episode. But the other ways I was trying to get guests was actually through Facebook groups for podcasting. And so there's, I think I'm in 50 plus of those podcasting groups on Facebook. Most of them are actually not that good, to be honest with you. They're not that curated. There's a lot of I don't want to say low quality guests or low quality people, but it's just a lot of spam goes on, right, in those groups.
Say like heavy sales.
Yes, exactly. It's like, come on my show, or drop a link to your latest episode, and then people just post their episode and don't listen to anyone else's. It's just an exercise in just vanity, I think, a lot of the time, right? And so what's cool about so I've joined a few other kind of external platforms where it's expressly for connecting hosts to guests, right? And so I was looking for these types of websites because I wanted more kind of a curated community of of either business owners, entrepreneurs, or people who have their own businesses, that kind of thing, who are very interested or expressly interested in coming on to shows like these to well, obviously to to speak about the topics of the podcast at hand, but also obviously for any guest, it's an opportunity for them to promote their own personal brand and whatever business they're in, right? And so so that's what, and for Matchmaker specifically, I was looking at before signing up, actually I was looking at the different types of guests, right, that were on the platform at the time. And I was like wow, these guests are very further ahead in their journey than I am at this stage. Okay. And I thought that the community is very high caliber. And so that's kind of what prompted me to sign up. And so I remember within the first, I would say like 24, 48 hours, or just the first few days, I got at least a dozen messages right on the platform. And so I was like, okay, this works. This is great. And I've ended up recording with a lot of the people who sent me messages, and they were great. I had no qualms about them whatsoever. And what's good about Matchmaker also is because your profile is still on there, right? And you might update from time to time. More people will come and contact you as well. Like even weeks, months later, right? They'll still come find you in your show. So I've had a few of those, recently as well. They come across the show on Matchmaker. Oh, okay. You want to be on the show? Okay, sure. Let's chat about it, right? So
great. That's good to hear. Okay, just to finish up, what if someone's thinking about starting a podcast? What would you say the kind of key learnings that you've had with your journey have been, and what advice would you give to yourself? I suppose if you could kind of go back to the start of the year, and sort of give that advice to someone else. What would the kind of key takeaways be?
Great question. I think advice number one for me is just get started. Honestly, just get started. Or for me specifically, get started earlier, right, than I did, because I did wait a full couple months between when I started recording and releasing episodes, and so within those 2 months, I actually accumulated 30 interviews. So that was already a lot. Wow. For me, it was born out of an irrational fear for me that I was worried that I wasn't going to get enough guests to come on the podcast. Yeah. Evidently, that is completely false. And so what happens is that when you start recording, obviously you can build a little bit of a backlog, but try to release as soon as possible. And the other thing, right, why I say just get started or just start, is that for a lot of people, especially those who don't come from the audio side of things or the audio world, podcasting can seem intimidating, right? Because there is a learning curve, right, to work through, right? Including, people worry about, what's the best podcast host, what kind of equipment should I use, what mic, what editing software, what, all these different types of things, right, before you can actually, how you submit to Apple Podcasts, whatever. Once you figure all that out, shouldn't take a lot of time within all these different steps. Just pick a podcast host, just pick a mic, just do it good enough. Because you can always improve the quality of your show later on. But if you never start, that's where a lot of people, or if you don't continue on after, say, 6 or 7 episodes, that's, when a lot of people stop podcasting. They're like, oh, it's not worth it. No one's listening to my show. If you just start and improve later on, right? Everyone is always embarrassed at their first few episodes anyways. If you're not actually that improving a lot. So yeah.
I think that's really encouraging advice. Thank you very much for that. I think that's great, actually. Especially when you say, you can reiterate and improve as you go. I think, that I completely agree with that. Okay, to finish up, Godwin, how can people find out about your podcast? How can people tune in and get in touch with you if they're interested?
Yeah, sure. Fantastic. So they can visit digitalintrovertspodcast.com. Finally recently created a central hub, a homepage for
cool.
all of my episodes, because what I used to do before was my placeholder was to use a Linktree link, basically, and so it would send everyone to all the podcast players, right? Click here for Apple, click here for Spotify. But I actually created a full-blown website where people not only can listen to the episodes or find it on their favorite podcasting app, but also check out reviews or sign up for the newsletter. Contact me. Look at the social media sites for the show as well. Everything is on there. So one easy, quick link.
Awesome. Godwin, thank you very much for your time.
There is an easier way to get booked onto more podcasts as a guest. Join Matchmaker.fm for free today and start making connections with podcasters who are looking for guests just like you.